Thanks for the kind words. So, this session, I'm just going to warn you right away, I kind of put in 251 slides, so the idea of questions afterwards is not really going to happen. We can take them at the bar or something else like that. So, this is 21 things I learned about Drupal and Twig. This is me, by the way. My name is Morten. I run a shop called Geek Royale. I'm a freelancer for Tech One Consulting. I have a column in a magazine called the Drupal Watchdog. It's called The Angry Themer. And that was basically done around the work we did around Drupal 7. And I'm also now the maintainer of the Classy theme, which is one of the base themes coming out of Drupal. Another thing is Mortendk could both stand for the language I'm from, not the language I also speak, which is swearing. Or Danish also could be the div killer, because that's actually my biggest achievement in the world of Drupal, is killing all of the divs inside of a field. I just got my website up and running again, Mortendk, and it's terrible, but I figured out there was more fun to get something out and actually test all of these crazy ideas I've had the last couple of years. So, but basically, used Drupal Twig or a few Gent as hashtags so we can find stuff and questions afterwards, and else just tweet at me. So, first of all, I was born in '73. That's the same year as AC/DC got formed, but that makes me, 42 years old, which I figured out, that means that I now have the answer for everything. And every time I think that I have the answer for everything, I go a step back and I look at this picture of me. This is me, 21, about 18 years old. I thought I knew everything. As you can see, I'm a little smartass, right? Long hair and all that stuff. Yeah, the ladies go like, ooh, the dudes go, yeah. And I go, holy shit, my daughter's gonna see this picture one day. It's gonna be really terrible. But, so I started building websites in 1996, right when this one came out. Anybody remember this? That was the good old days, right? Yes, there's like one dude in the room who's like, yeah, Netscape 2.0. So this is 96. Now I go 10 years ahead. This is my first DrupalCon in Brussels 10 years later. These 10 years, I've just been building websites. I also built my own like CMS, as everybody should have done at some point. So I learned how hard security and data abstraction is. But these 10 years, they're actually 2 times 10 years I've had. I learned one thing, and this is this. Designers and developers think very, very different. And the other thing is that besides of that is, Drupal is built by a certain group of people, developers. It's built by engineers for engineers. And you know what they don't care about? They don't really care about design. They don't really care about the front end, well, unless it's JavaScript, because now you can put your developer mind into it. And we have the sales pros who they can't put this word clean markup as a feature. I do think that we could put you cannot really expect the design that you think you want to implement because our system don't support it kind of way. That's how I've been looking at Drupal for the last 10 years. Because nobody seems to understand that in my mind that the most important thing is the markup and the CSS. That's what creates our end final product. And that's kind of what we're going to go into here. Because when you need a website, you're going to have UX, you're going to have design, you have content, you have code, you have DevOps, you have all of these things. But if you don't have a theme, you don't have all these devices, all these things we're going to show at it. Actually, a world without a theme looks like this. This is a JSON output. That would be the other way of showing Drupal. Actually, the world without a theme is this. This is what you get out of a Drupal box if you don't have a theme on it. If we remove all the themes, there's nothing coming out of it. So that's kind of what we're doing. There's actually, can you see a little dot? Yes, there is a light out there. Hey, what's that? So one thing I've learned in the world of Drupal is that, me coming up from Denmark, Scandinavia, Viking kind of mentality, there's one thing that, we don't ask, we take. And that was kind of the thing that happened in the world of Drupal over the last 10 years. Back in 2010, what we did then was we did Drupal Design Camp. Drupal Design Camp Prague was the first of these that was before we called it Frontend United. And that was when this whole journey of how do we fix this front end? Back next on that was when we went to Munich and actually decided that we need to change the theme system. This was the whiteboard that I was standing by for 8 hours and fighting everybody in the room who wanted to fight against me and our ideas behind it. And then 2 years later we have Jen, who was the primary responsible person for getting Twig into core, and we suddenly put Twig into core that day. And I have the best anecdote about that. So this morning, first day at Bad Camp. Bad Camp is like a 2,000 person camp. And I'm very nervous this morning. I had done a session that's called the Angry Themer. And the Angry Themer session was basically a session where I told everything was wrong with the theming system and why we should change it. That was kind of the idea behind it. So I get up this morning, I'm up at like 7:30 or something, and I sit down in the hotel, and I'm sitting there and I'm eating my breakfast. And Dries comes over, and he goes like, hey Morten, can I sit down here? And I was like, oh yeah, you can. Bet you can, because at that point we knew Twig was pretty ready to get in, but we also knew some people didn't want to push it in. So I thought, you know what, Dries, I'm just going to talk at you for the next 45 minutes until your ears are going to bleed about why it's so important that we make this system designer friendly. So I don't eat my breakfast this morning. I just talk at Dries for 45 minutes. And I go over to my own session because I'm not going to listen to Dries talk his keynote. It's kind of my tradition now. I always skip Dries' keynote. I don't know why. It just happens. So I'm over at my room getting all fired up. I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm hating the world. Everything good that a dude like me can be fired up about. And then John Albin, he comes running over and he's like, dude, you need to get back to the room. It's like, I'm not going to listen to Dries talk about his journeys and travels. Like, no, dude, we're about to push Twig in. I'm like, holy shit. So I run back to the room and we're seeing this stuff and I'm like all fired up by anger, like it gets in. And here I stand, a little boy from Copenhagen, all pissed off by how the community do not understand me. And we got Twig in. So that was me trying to not shed a little tear that day. I've been walking over to my room with the biggest smile on my face. So later that day, over beers, I meet Dries and I go like, dude, why the fuck didn't you tell me anything about this? I mean, I had to like change my whole session. Everything was like, and he just looks at me at the Dries way like, well, if I've told you, it wouldn't have been a surprise. So that's apparently how we get stuff in. So, but the thing is that we wanted to make it designer friendly. So by making it designer friendly, we're changing a lot of things. And I got this one question. This is like some of the places I've been speaking this last couple of years where I've been traveling around with this thing. Like this one question always coming in. Am I doing this right? How do I do this stuff? Well, first of all, we need to do this. We need to think about this is a designer-friendly theme system. That's the idea behind it. So the developer aspect approach to it, we kind of need to forget about. So the first thing we're going to do before we take my 21 things is we are actually going to unlearn everything. So forget about Drupal 7. Why do you want to forget about Drupal 7? This is why I want to forget about Drupal 7. So let's do this. Right? Because this Stockholm syndrome we've been a part of for so many years, where Dependencies is called a feature. 5,000 lines of PHP template is perfectly okay to have your logic built in. The class soup that makes your markup rich. Nope. Well, forget all about that. Forget all of these things that you learned in Drupal 7. Forget about it. This is a good thing. So the first thing you're going to do when you build a new theme, you're going to build a base theme. This is what we're building on. And this is how you define it. And basically, there's two base themes you want to build on. And forget about what you knew about base themes in Drupal 7. This is another way of thinking. Drupal 7 base themes were like trying to clean the markup. This is giving you a foundation to build on. And basically, it goes like this. We have Drupal core up in the top. We have two different themes, stable or classy. And then we have all the contrib themes. They're going to rely on one of these two themes. And then you have your own theme. So you can kind of like call in whatever you want. So why do we have two different base themes in Drupal core? Well, here's the thing. We start by taking Drupal core and we cloned that. And we cloned that into a theme called stable. That means that all the templates that we have now in Drupal 8, 8.0 is now in stable. That means that you can now rely on this markup. And why is that? Well, let's look at this example. Here we have the unordered list with an inline class on. Inline class is hard-coded somewhere inside of deep of Drupal's heart. We did not remove that because, honestly, Drupal 8 isn't really done when we got it out the door. It was done enough. We're going to find all kinds of things that we're going to fix. So this is one of the things where, like, why do we hard-code the inline class in? Let's say that you see this inline class and you put a background blue on it. Well, here comes 8.2. The evil people who's wanting to fix core is fixing core. We're removing this dependency on this class inline. We're removing that. So now the inline class you were relying on is now gone. By relying on stable as your base theme, we can clean up core as you still can build your sites and rely on the markup. And then we can come up with new versions of stable further down the road. Because stable, what it's giving you is this. It's a bare minimum. No classes, no nothing. That's the whole point of it. So you have the bare minimum to work on. If you're using classy, well, then you're going to have all these classes. And yes, we're using BEM naming on it. And if you don't like BEM naming, you know what? You can just take the templates and you can override it and you can come up with your own thing. You can go like, woohoo, freedom, and call your class that. You can even do emojis, which is kind of a thing. I think we should build a theme using emojis just for the fun of it. And here's the thing, what you don't want to do, you don't want to go with base theme false. Base theme false is how you can like inherit directly from the core templates, which is the template that lives all the way down there. If you go into the core node, something down there, that's where that template lives. And you don't want to rely on that because, believe me, we will remove that stuff. We will change that stuff because Drupal 8 is not done. Back in Drupal 7, what we did when Drupal 7 came out, it was done. That means that we built on a markup class that was already too old at this point. So don't do that. If you want to know more about, I did an article about base themes, and I've done one, there's another one here explaining all these things on how to build classy. So debugging, that's kind of the next thing. Now you got your base theme up, now what? Okay, debugging, there's multiple things on it. First of all, the service YAML file. This is kind of, you have service and you have the settings.local. Settings.local is where you want to set the preprocess and set them to like default, so you don't have to like run around like clearing your cache all the time. That's kind of dummy. And then what you're going to do is you're going to call in your development.service file, and this is where you're going to set up twig debug. And what is twig debug? Well, that gives you this kind of thing. When you look in your markup, that's where we explain to you directly in the view source what's actually going on. Even better than giving you these suggestions with the templates you can work with, we even going to point you to actually where it comes from. So now you have an idea of what is it Drupal gives me. If you want to go one step further down, you can even download and add to your Chrome browser the Drupal template helper, and that's going to give you this. Let's see, yes. See how nice it is? And this is, by the way, just like, this is all the templates you can kind of work on. You can override that with. We're going to come into that a little bit later. By the way, install Drush because that's just a good thing. And let's see here, what do you got here? So why you want to get all this in? Well, here's what Kint is going to do for you. So Kint is kind of the new debugging tool that we have. So inside of your template, if you do a Kint, what you can see here is, we'll just refresh, reload, ta-da, here's all your data. Here's all the data that you can work with and play around with. This is how you get Drupal to tell you what actually goes on. So get Kint down. You can even go one step further. You could get search Kint, because when you do this Kint, another thing, by the way, when you fire up Kint, don't do it on the whole content, because if you do that in the node, your browser will die. Probably your Apache server locally will also die, because it's a lot of data. But search Kint, when you get all the stuff out, you see here I search for section, it gave me 73 different elements that you can now find. So you can actually find the stuff you want to look at. Another thing, just to mention quick, libraries debug is another module you want to look into, because that kind of explains what kind of libraries we're loading on the page. And no worries, we're going to come to libraries. By the way, how many here have actually built stuff in Drupal 8? Good, so the rest of you are like, what are you even talking about, Morten? Okay, just hold on to your seats. When we're done with these 21 things, you're going to be like, holy shit, can I do this? Why am I even building stuff in Drupal 7? Another trick I'm using now is actually using my WYSIWYG approach, which is kind of like removing the toolbar. Toolbar visibility module is removing the toolbar from your theme, so you don't have the issue. You resize your browser and the toolbar jumps into your site and you have to like remove that and you get pissed off at the world. I do this other thing. I'm removing contextual links in Quick Edit, because why are they even in my theme? I want to be able to see the same thing as my end users doing. All right. Let me just get some water here. So templates. There's two different ways of thinking in templates. Template out of the box, if you take the classy theme. The classy theme is like the theme you want to use if you just want to use all the basic classes. Is grouped in like different like overall groups. That's kind of an idea to give you some logic to what's in there, because we have like about 140 templates. And these template files even also come in these different suggestions, as you remember we could see here in our pre-process. So that's one way of looking at the files, just like they're building in these folders. But another way of thinking of them is beginning to group your templates. And here's an idea to how I'm grouping them right now. So what I'm building up is I have a base folder where all of my basic template lives, and I have components, which is kind of my overall building block. Here's my node, here's my search bar, here's like all of these things. And then I have my layout files, which is also built down here. Anybody spot a pattern? This is the same way we're building our CSS. So now I'm kind of building my template files, and my CSS files is built the same way. Because here's the thing, that when Drupal asks for a template, what it will do, it will always go for the first template it can find. And when you have 135 templates, like template naming becomes really, really important. You can always look at it, almost look at it as like a kind of a specificity that you need to look into. So in this example, if I wanted to use my node, oh shit, this example is wrong. Let me just fix this really quick. Because this should be a set. Let's see that, and here, there's the other set. Okay, save that, sorry for that. All right, so normally it would just read through the whole directory and look for one of the templates, so it would take the first template it can find. It doesn't care what name you have, it looks only for the file name. So if I want to make sure that it's actually going to take my node foo, I need to give it a more specific name. So here's the thing that I'm doing now. I have a system with 3 dashes and 2 dashes and 1 dash. There's 1 dash in names that comes out of Drupal. 2 dashes is my separator between my value and my name. And 3 dashes separates each of these things. That makes very long file names, but it's actually pretty sweet. So how do we do that? Well, we have this thing called a hook theme suggestion hook alter. It's a long name, but it's actually the first part of the hook is just your theme name, so whatever your theme name is. And the second part of that hook is what kind of like fields or template you want to hook into and do this stuff. So what I'm doing here is, first of all, you can see these above is vanilla theme suggestions, because they're going to get so many suggestions out that I kind of want to explain this to myself. So I know I've actually given now a template suggestion that's just dashes, but it's just to make my own life a little bit easier. So by doing this, I'm actually going to get this out. See, field dash dash node, and so now I know this is my field node. Actually, the name of this is my field intro. So now I know this. If you go further up, you can begin to see like how this whole system is built up. So I can figure out later on, what is this template actually doing? It do not matter where it lives. And yes, it's getting a little bit ridiculous sometimes, because the way I'm building my templates now is I'm grouping them in, here's the thing I want to do. Here's all of my templates, all of my elements for my little code viewer. And as you can see, I have the CSS files living the same place as my template files. When I did this the first time, I kind of had to like do it in darkness, because I felt really, really bad, because you put your CSS in your CSS folder, right? Not really when we've been to build system that's really big. You can actually do this out of the box. So I have all of my stuff in just one place, which now comes to these fields. So Drupal is built the same way in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. We have a page, we have HTML, calls then the page, that these pages are then going to have some regions, and inside of these regions we can have like different other elements, and inside of a region we then now have the content, and then we have the node, and inside of this node we have all of these templates. So what actually is going on with these templates files, so every time you have a field have a separate template. Some of the fields are shared. Like if I have 2 different images, they will automatically be shared unless I give it a specific name. So this is why I'm using this kind of ridiculous long file path. So I'm sure that if I'm doing some very specific thing to the image over here, I'm not going to do that to this image over here unless it's a collected thing I want to do. So now looking at fields, let's just jump into this and look at what a field actually is. Because a field is basically 2 things. It's a label and a value. Actually, it has 4 different variations. If a single with a label, it has multiple values with no label, and of course multiple values with a label. These are the 4 different variations of like a field that you can render out, which means that the first time you're going to open up your template file and this field template file, it's going to be a little bit scary, because we're also taking care of these 4 variations, including the managed display, which also is going to add stuff in, which is give us like these. Oh, sorry for that. Let me just jump back here. So as you can see, right now we have a lot of things going on inside of this template, and this is actually why the field template was such a pain in the ass to work with back in the days, because you have all this stuff in. So when you work in, and this is actually the field template is pretty much the template you're going to open up the most. This is the first time you look into the field template, and this is going to be a little bit scary, because it's big and complicated. But if you look at it this way, we test for no label or label. And if we look at that way, I was like, okay, I'm just like 2 different variations, and then I'm going to roll through it. Well, fair enough. Here's my pattern, so I can actually go out and say this. So I can say, if there's only one value, just give me a wrapper around it. I give me the data, else give me a wrapper around this, so I can like keep the data in. Oh, this is probably going to be a section because there's so much other data and has an identifier on it. So these are ways that you can build around these fields. You don't need to like call these fields in all the time, but the reason that you actually want to do that is to not break Drupal, because inside of a field there's this very important thing, the attributes. And the attributes, that's where Drupal can yank in all kinds of funky stuff to your data. And no worries, we're going to come to that as well. So the thing is, when you go into these templates, what you want to do is you want to taste on what kind of data is there. And that's where the loop come in. So every time Drupal puts something out, it's pretty much a piece of data that you can loop through. And that was the first big issue I had when I came into Drupal 8, was like, how do I get my data out? Because I was used to like going like PHP template way and just dumping the data and grabbing it some way and yanking it around. In Twig, what you always just do a loop on the data. So here I take my items linked. That's all the items that we're putting out into this template. And then I'm looping through all of these different elements, and there's 4 different things that we're going to look for. The first one is loop first. What am I going to do if this is the first part of the data that comes out? Well, loop.first, that's where you can set that. Then we're going to look, hey, what if loop last? If I want to put a last and a first class on it, this is where I could put this thing in. Even better, we can begin to count on stuff. So I can do, and by the way, you know why Twig is awesome? Because it's built for human beings. How many, if you ask out in the room, how do you count? What number would you start counting with? Exactly 1, because you're a human being. If you're a programmer, you're going to be 0. 0 is the first thing. Exactly, a 0. Yeah, it's like I want it. Yeah, 0. That's the only way to count. If I have to explain to my 6-year-old daughter how to count, and we start with 0, no. We start with 1. That is what you can. By the way, set Twig to start with 0 if you hate this. But so you count, and you can even do this. You can even count backwards. So you can begin to taste and do all these things as you print out your data. Can actually also do like odd and even and stuff. And at the last point, you're going to do default. So every time you print out your data, you can run through all these different iterations and say, okay, if you're like this number or that number, if you have this data, that data inside of you, do this and do that. So we actually have complete control of this just by the loop. And I have a little example of that actually, how we did that if my movie want to play. So this is like this is a bunch of different loops I did. The idea here is to say, well, at some point I don't even want to have the data out. I just want to do something dumb with it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask come with the answer for when Drupal 8 is going to come out. We have 10 loops here, and I'm going to test on loop 8 and going to explain to people when Drupal 8 is coming out. Which, by the way, was really, really funny when we were in Barcelona last year, because we thought Drupal 8 was actually coming out in RC1. And what happened the morning during Dries' keynote was that we in the Twig group apparently was responsible for the auto-escape issues, so Drupal 8 were not coming out during Barcelona. That was fun. I got the whole room to boo at me at my session that day. That was good, just to get it on with. Anyways, let's see. So, bam. You can do whatever you want to do with your markup. Drupal is not going to get in your way. It probably is at some point, but at the ground of it, it's not going to get in your way. So, with all of these like 135 templates, at some point you're going to be a little bit tired of that. At some point you just want to have the data, only the data. I don't want to have a wrapper, don't have the attributes, you just need the data for it. So what you can do there is like inside of your note you go content.thefieldname.0, which is the first part of the data, and then grab the markup out. Then you can yank that out and just getting that piece of data. So in this little example, as I'm doing here, is I have this code widget where basically I just want to figure out what kind of code is this. So my Prism is like a code coloring module. JavaScript can test on the language that I've put this code snippet to and pass that to Prism so it knows what kind of color variation it want to do that. I don't want to call a fucking template in to do that. I just need the data. So by doing it, like see content field code language 0 the markup, I'm actually going to get this out when this is my YAML file is going to print out. So that's like a quick way you can jump through that. You're going to miss your attributes on it, but when it's just like the one value that you need and you don't need the attributes on it, well, this is a quick, dirty way to do that. So the 7th thing, and this is actually one of the biggest thing in Drupal 8, what it's going to do is selectors, because CSS selectors do not live anymore in a pre-process or hidden downside of a module. Your selectors live directly inside of your node template. And the first thing you're going to see every time you open up any template is going to have this set classes. And these classes, this is our CSS classes. Basically what set does, it creates a variable for you. So here's going to go like Drupal 8. Foo is now Drupal8. No, Drupal8 is the best. You can also create arrays instead. So when we're going through this thing, there's a few little tricks that you need to learn. Like a tilde is kind of adding two strings together. So you have foo bar here, or as I'm doing here, I'm taking the node type and I'm testing on what is my node bundle, which is my content type. I do a filter, clean class, and the filter clean class, what it does is it makes sure that if somebody has a content type with spaces and stuff in it, it's gonna make that into a CSS naming class. So now I have my classes node -type -article. This is like the simplest way to add this class in. The other thing you can do is you can ask a question. Is something true? Well, then do foo or bar. So if the node is promoted, add in the class name, promoted. If it's not promoted, put in no promo, or just leave that string empty, so it's not going to put that stuff on. So this is the way you're going to manipulate your classes. You can test on all these things. You can even like do multiple tests. Say if this is promoted, if this is this is that, this and that and this, well then add class green inside of it. And here's the thing, never use preprocessors to set your classes. Just don't. Always use a variable. So if you wanna need a new variable like this, so you kind of need the node ID, you do your preprocess on whatever field it is, then you create your variables, because now this variable we can either print in our template or you can use that to figure out what kind of classes you want to have, because we don't want to yank in the classes to be called like node ID 42. We want to make sure we have classes that actually make sense. Which we now get into the heart of it, the attributes. Attributes is pretty goddamn sweet. They can give you like a class. They can give you data object. They can give you the array elements. Basically, this is how Drupal 7 used to do it, right? We have like all of these like predefined classes coming in. You can kind of manipulate them out. If I went to Drupal 8, what I could do instead is I have variables, and my variables is then going to pass into class, and then class is going to explain to Drupal what classes got. So we're taking the control of how our classes get generated, move them away from like inside of Drupal core, and push them all the way out to the template where you live your life. So to add a class, we can do this. So you have your attributes, and you can see up there, doing my set classes. Inside of my set classes, I'm creating like different classes I want. Then I do attributes.add class and put in the classes, and now it's just going to print out the classes that you have. You can also remove a class, because let's say that we have a module. A module comes with a class I don't want to have. This module is called Bad Canadian. And Bad Canadian is yanking in a Nickelback class. I don't want to have that. So how does Drupal actually do that? How can I remove this class without doing dumb stuff? Well, it works this way. Core is providing some classes that is very, very essential for Drupal core, like is visible. Like these kind of like simple classes is adding, and there's 4 or 5 of them all in all. Then you have a module. A module can actually add in the attributes, variable attributes, and then do an add class. Now it has created this class, Nickelback class, and it's now living inside of my string. And then my theme is doing the attributes.add class, and then put in whatever I want to put into the theme. So to do this, to remove this, well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to just ask Drupal to like attributes.remove class, and then it's going to remove it. So it's going to look like that. So you have the Bad Canadian, and we remove that class, and it's now gone. That's just how simple it works. That we have these like little modifiers that we can manipulate stuff around. I think though, when you if you do anything on class selectors and you put anything on JavaScript based in, always prefix that stuff with JS. Always, 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 always. No exceptions. Add in 2 different classes. If you want to have a class that like do something, because that's how you work, well, fine. But then do a JS prefix, the name of it, and then put in the name of that template. You're going to thank yourself later on, believe me. Clean class we covered earlier on. So, and the attributes, what you can do is like here we have our class. I take my attributes, I remove it. I can add in another class here called Rush, and my Rush, and I can even add in attributes. And on top of the attributes, I can put all this stuff in, which will give me an ID with a top on and class Rush. So I completely manipulated these attributes that Drupal came up with, and it's me who have the final saying. So what can you use this for? Okay, let's pimp something up. So here's the search field. And what I'm doing here is I'm removing the classes form search because I don't want to have that. I'm setting a placeholder variable into it. So I'm going to have a placeholder inside of my form. I'm then setting an attribute called autosave, one called result, autocomplete, autofocus, and add in that placeholder. Because in Safari, what you can do is this. It's actually going to give you, as you can see, let's see if they want to play. Here we go. So what it's going to give me is all of these things built directly out of the box. So you can actually see all the last elements that I searched for and put all this stuff in. And that's how you can manipulate your data just directly in. No Drupal is harmed, no nothing. It's just doing that. Same thing, if you want to remove the size of a form element and input field, because we never got around to fix that, you can remove that attribute as well. So we can manipulate these elements completely. So that's all good and handy dandy, right? But sometimes you just want to cowboy stuff. And by cowboying stuff, I mean, you need to do something very quick, very fast. So let's say you want to add a class when the node ID is 158. That's a thing we've done before, right? So back in the good old days, we had a node ID somewhere up in the body, and we could push that in. Let's do this proper instead. So this is the thing I want to get in. I want to get a class called Hot Rockin' Cowboy. The reason I'm calling it Hot Rockin' Cowboy instead of node ID 58 is, what if I actually want to reuse this later on? So like use real class names, and this is going to add in hot pink as my background. So here we're actually going to go to the pre-process, because this data is not available for us inside of our HTML.twig file. So what I'm doing here is I'm hammering in a pre-process, then I'm grabbing the node with that long route, then I test if there's even a node here. Because the reason you want to test if there's a node here is else Drupal is going to give you an error. It's going to blow up your site. Yes, I blew up my site testing this. And then I set a variable that says node ID. And then when I jump over to my template, I say, hey, dude, if the node ID is actually 158, I now have this body class called Hot Rockin' Cowboy, and I can put it in. And back again to the way of thinking here, like I said, node ID, if you have something, add in this class, else do nada. So when I'm 158 node ID, this is what I'm going to get out. This is a dirty trick that we really shouldn't do. What you can do if you want to have a really quick trip, actually look into your page template. Your page template, with that get loaded, do a kint on the content of that. The amount of good data that's hiding in there, basically everything that the node comes with you, is really, really powerful. Whew, apparently I took half my time up, and we're on 11. I'm pretty good on time, right? So libraries is this new concept that we yanked in. So what is a library? Well, libraries, what it does is basically in your info file, what you're going to do is you're going to call in libraries, and then you have like your theme name, and then you call in this library. And the idea behind libraries is my info file can call it directly, so my whole theme gets these libraries. And libraries basically as CSS and JavaScript files. That can get defined, but my template files can also call in a library. So if you're only going to use a certain amount, like when you have your slider thing, we know we're going to put a slider on our site anyways, right? So you're going to have JavaScript and CSS for that. There's no reason to load that in on every page. You can just call that stuff directly from your template instead. That's pretty sweet. So let's go and look in this like library file, how it's actually built. The first thing here is actually that we grouped all the CSS files based on the SMAC methodology. So you can add in like, here's all my base files, here's all my layout files, here's my components, here's my state, here's my theme. You can just, if you don't like this way of working, just ignore it and just yank it all into base, all into theme. It doesn't really matter. If Drupal comes out with stuff, it's also going to work this way. But as you add in these files, let's say here I have a base. On my base, I have this foo CSS file. You want to load them in different orders. You can set a weight on it, and that's the parentheses that we have in there, and you can set a weight on it, like pluses and minuses, add that in. If you want to add in an external CSS file, or like add in fonts from, let's say, Google fonts, you can add in a type external. So this is how you're going to add in your font file. You can even do media directly in here. So here's my print style sheet. I only want to use this on a print. This is how I'm going to do it in here. The last thing you can do, besides adding CSS and JavaScript in your libraries, you can also declare dependencies. So a thing that we had many issues with around Drupal 7 were that jQuery always came out of the box, and that was kind of a pain in the ass. What is happening now is, if you don't set a dependency and says, in this example, I'm using coarse jQuery. If you just have a jQuery file right in there, you can just yank that in. But this is now, I'm calling a core library jQuery. I'm going to use that. And that is, if you really need to have these 82 kilobytes of epic love. I kind of need to do them because I write so shitty JavaScript, so I'm used to using jQuery. I need to brush up my skills so I can remove these 82 kilos. But this is how you can create these dependencies on them. Fair enough. Now we've added dependencies in, but the way I'm thinking is always like, how can I remove stuff? So we have these two things. We have the libraries override. What libraries override does is pretty sweet. So here I figured out that we had Modernizer built into core. Like, I don't want to have Modernizer inside of my theme. I want to use my own version, or I just want to remove it, or what I want to do. Well, you can go in and say core/Modernizer. Now I'm calling this this library and say false. So don't use it. Modernizer is no longer in your theme, so you can like remove all these things. To figure out everything that's loaded, remember that thing I talked about in Debug? There's actually a way of looking at all these. If you want to do it quick and dirty, just do a style sheet remove. It's kind of it's really not the way that we should do stuff, but sometimes you just want to kill a file, remove some CSS files. The thing is, if you're doing anything inside of like using classy or stable, as you can see now I'm calling the internal libraries classy and stable. Remember to put the plains on it, else you're gonna get errors when you add up to some kind of sites. So these are our libraries. Sweet. What can we do with them? Well, inline libraries. That's as I call it. I call them inline libraries because this is kind of the, hey, I have a template. I add this stuff in as I want to. So here's my code widget. My code widget is a little simply built a paragraph element that has a file name, a bunch of code, and that's it. And I'm using Prism. Prism is a color coding system for taking JS files, CSS files, so forth. We actually have it on Drupal.org as well. So I only want to add in Prism JS and Prism CSS when I'm actually on this code element. So how do we do this? Well, here's my paragraph /code /paragraph --code HTML twig file, and I'm doing an attached library up on top of it. Attached library, then active theme, and then the name of the library that I've defined, which is right here. So as you can see, I'm defining these different elements, and now I can call them in. But I'm only going to call them in when I'm using this particular element, when that is called in, and that's the beauty of it. We can now begin to rethink the whole way that we're doing our theming, not as here's my whole site, but here's this component, here's that component, here's this element. When I'm loading this element in on the page, well, then add these 5 things in, instead of just yanking everything into the top of our file. Attached lib, a small little trick here is don't hard code these names in, because if you do that, you will do the same mistake as I did 4 days ago when I was renaming my theme. And now I'm actually calling a library that's existing in another theme instead of the new theme I was building. So use active theme. Active theme will give you the name of your theme. And then you can add in the library. Did that make sense? Yeah, okay, there's like 3 or 4 people nodding. Good enough for me. So here's another sexy thing. What we can do now, okay, we can add in these like elements, these libraries, SVG files. What's the beauty of SVG? It's pure fucking text. You can do anything you want to do. You can actually hand code your own design. I'm gonna try that one day just for the fun of it when I get really old. But what you can do now is instead of including them as an image file or something like that, you can yank all this stuff directly into your template by doing an include. The important thing here is to remember to call it all the way from themes. If you just call it from your theme name, that's not going to work. You need to have the whole path with you, /themes, and all the way around, because that is going to give you this. Inline SVG pimped directly into my template without, this is my end of markup. And yes, I do know that I should clean this up, but the good thing here is I can just reopen my stuff in Sketch and rebuild it. Not even exciting about this is SVG files directly inputted. God damn it, you're hot crowd. Okay, so twig blocks is another thing we have. Twig blocks is not the same thing as a Drupal block. Now I'm renaming this. In the world of twig, this is just called a block. We call it the twig block to make sure that we don't have any issues with it. So a twig block is basically the idea of, I have a page template, and this page template, I'm gonna have a block of that template. I wanna be able to yank something else into it. Here's my another element I can kind of input into it. Let's go through these slides. I actually think I did a little video on it. Yes. So here I have my secret front page message, and you can see I did a block and an end block. Over here is my page -- front, and here is my super secret welcome to my home page, because yes, I'm 42 years old. I built websites back when we called them home pages. And what I'm doing here is basically, yes, as you can see, I had a little error this morning on my site. the whole idea is like being able to like call these elements in, and they're using the template suggestion names as a way to like you can inject this. So now you can like begin like rebuild the idea, so you don't have one page template with like 45 different variations of it. You can just have these block elements that you're then gonna replace and put stuff into when you actually need that. So this is one way of using the blocks. And another advanced example of that is when we begin to think in components, we're going to talk about a little bit about later, where we're actually using blocks to like replace the whole way that Drupal is actually rendering stuff. So here's my holy quest. The first time I built the Drupal site was for a client in Denmark, and this was back in 2006. That was when we used images for all the menus. And menus in Drupal have been notorious a pain in the ass. So what I wanted to do back in 10 years ago was adding in an image for each menu item, and that was just what I wanted. What I ended up doing to get Drupal to do what I wanted was doing regular expressions in a pre-process to be able to yank in these images and testing on what name that each element had and so forth. That was terrible. So at some point, like the last couple of months when I began to play with SVG files, I figured out, you know what? Couldn't it be amazing if we could actually do this stuff with SVG files? So here's how I built my menu, and this is where things that might gonna go a little bit nutty. So this is my menu, and as you can see, it has a little bit of a hover thing on it. So to be able to add in these icons based on whatever kind of icon name I'm going to use, I'm going to use the SVG use, which is then going to call an external SVG file that has all these different elements in it. But what I'm going to do even more here is I'm going to use the description field to be able to add in like a specific name. So I'm doing a pipe on this. So this pipe, I'm going to split this pipe up. So now I have an identifier I can yank in. Let's see this. So what we're doing here is, what I want to make sure about, as you can see, here we go. This is Drupal's menu, out the box, and Drupal 8 menu, not Drupal 7 menu. So what is I'm actually going to do here? Well, first of all, in Drupal 8, what we have is active as a class. Active is coming in from JavaScript. So just by hard coding everything, that's not really gonna work. I tried that, and we also want to make sure that our end users can actually change the menu further on. I'm gonna add in an SVG inline image, but I'm gonna use it as an image map just for the fun of it. And then I'm gonna take the rest of this tooltip and yank it in. So it all lives in here. This is all my files. This is my image map. This is the SVG file I'm using. As you can see, I have separate IDs here I can call. So what I'm doing here is basically, I take this and I split it up in tooltip and an icon name. So now by adding these elements in, I can begin to have variables kind of built into my system without having to create a new node or do a new module and so forth. I have the tooltip, I have the icon name. The icon name is then going to call my menu SVG file and take that and then put it in. That kind of makes sense. So basically, the idea behind this is, let's see here. You take the string, you split it, you take the IDs, you call a new SVG file, you create the markup, you sneak that into Twig, then you make an inline template and then profit. The reason for this is that evil people, also known as the security team, don't like SVG as a tag, which makes a lot of sense. Like they don't like JavaScript because we don't want to have end users like uploading an SVG file or a JavaScript file to our system. The problem is right now that happened, that it kind of makes it not possible for me to like yank these things in because stuff gets whitelisted. So, but there's a way around it. So I'm gonna first take the split, and then I'm gonna take the markup, then I'm gonna take my inline template, build that, and then we're gonna render all of it. So up here is my split. I'm creating two different variables, a link title and an icon ID. I'm gonna use that for my icon name. And then I have the markup for this like specific piece of element. I have a span class wrapped around my SVG view box, and I'm adding that in, and then I'm going to call in the SVG icon, kind of like only take that icon. Let's see here. So, and then that's going to be called, and then I'm going to take that and use into menu to use the use, which is using a separate external SVG icon. Then I'm creating a new variable here. It's called set menu link. And the menu link is an inline template, which is kind of a template inside of a template. I can't really explain what's going on here, just that this is the way you can kind of sneak this in. Because what we want to do at the end of it, we're going to use the link. And the link is actually what creates our menu links. So now I'm taking my menu link, all that markup I just created, and I'm doing a render in that. So everything here is going to get rendered. Then I take the item URL as well and put that in. So now I have my title. My old title is actually this gigantic piece of markup. And item URL is still there, and then I'm going to add in a class, a data balloon, and data balloon position, which is like a little CSS thingy that's really sweet. What would be really nice if we could just set a variable and hammer in markup, but the security guys, what is that security always says? You don't know the answer to this? Security always says no. That's just how it is. So, and this is why sometimes we end up doing these kind of crazy things. This is more to explain that we can actually do these things. I do hope that we figured out a way to do a better whitelist, or we can actually tell our template, hey, I'm using local files instead, so we don't get into do inline templates. But this can be a way where you can uber control your markup. So, layouts. Layout is kind of different right now. What we can do, which is like a cool thing, is so if you go into a node template, you have the content variable. Inside of the content variable, you can do this without, because normally content variable is just going to print everything out. And when you're printing everything out, you don't really want to do that. We want to split it out. We want to create very, very specific markup. So I have a variable, I have my pipe, I have a twig function called without, and then I take the field name. The concept behind this is, let's say I have this layout I want to build. And normally if I just print out content, it's going to take my text, my tags, and my image and just print it out there. What I want to do is I want to separate these elements out. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking content pipe without the image, and now I can go and print content.image, and I can put that wherever I want to. Actually, you can always do content.image if you want to do that, because that's the way you can drill into the templates. So I can do that. I can even do content without image and then without the tags and put them in. Because further down the road, at some point, what's going to happen is that you're going to add in a new field is going to come into your site. So as that come in, it should get printed. So if you don't print content out on your template, you're just going to be tired of your theme, or you're also going to be tired for yourself, because why is it not printing? Is it the cache, so forth and so forth. Now you're printing it all out. So when your new field come in, you can actually do that. So as an example of this, here I have my content without links, field image, and field tags. I then print out my field image down here, and above this, and this is kind of where the magic is, above even the place I'm calling in content without, I can print out my content.field tags. So you can kind of completely module your elements as you want to module them, and you can move them around completely as you see fit. So without is kind of one way of removing stuff. And now we're talking about removing stuff. Here's one of the dumb little tricks that I figured out, that there's still templates we might don't like. So what I have in my folder here is inside of my templates. Let me see here. I have this cleanup folder. I call it _cleanup, also to explain to myself that these are elements that I might not want. Did I forget that video? Oh, damn it. I'm going to show you that. The idea here is, let me just show you this really quick. So the idea actually in this is, let's say we have the region template. Region templates get loaded all over. I don't want to have that markup around it, so what I'm doing here is I'm commenting everything out here, and I just do if content, print the content. So it doesn't have all the templates and everything else. Oh shit, you can't see that. God damn it. I'm not the brightest boy in the room. All right, did that make sense? Here we go. So this is my region template, and my region template is, let me just take this. Is living inside of my cleanup folder. As you can see, I have a couple of different cleanups, because my folder name doesn't matter. Drupal doesn't care about the folder names. This is just me to be able to organize my stuff. So create a cleanup or stuff we don't want to move. Also, now I know that these files here is files that I've modified, I've removed markup, I've done something because I didn't want to have Drupal to put it out, because I want to have complete control of my markup. All right, so back to my slides. Filters. Here's the thing I got a little bit upset about a couple of days ago, because I was playing around with filters. And as you saw, you can just do a pipe and a filter. And normally in Drupal8, you can do filter upper. Filter upper is going to make your stuff uppercase, because uppercase is awesome. And let's say I want to do the same thing on the content. So here, just to show that this is my content with my upper. And let's say I want to do upper here. What's happening now when you're just doing a pipe upper is my data is disappearing. And I yelled a little bit about Kotzer, like, Kotzer, why is this not working? And he came back and was like, well, dude, you need to do text instead because a render array or something, which is a little bit confusing. But when you read the manual, like the Twig manual, it says like pipe and do something. Well, anyways, this is how you can do that. Well, now I take my text and I do my upper, and then this comes out. It's like, what the fuck happened here? Why do I have all this markup shit? Well, because the evil boys over in security go like, well, if you're going to print out data into my Drupal site, I'm actually going to auto-escape everything. So thank you for that. So now, because I did anything on my text, they have now like done that. So okay, fair enough. I'm going to do upper, then strip tags. Because this is my theme, it's not your theme. This is my theme. I'm gonna decide on this stuff. So we go like here. As you can see here now, I still have ampersands and spacings. Like, for fuck's sake, I mean, why are we doing this? Is ampersand now suddenly something security? Apparently it is. So, what are we gonna do then? I'm gonna be like, yo, fuck this shit. I'm gonna do replace on an ampersand and this space and be like, bam, motherfuckers. And these are like some of the dumb things we sometimes do to get around this stuff. I really, really hope that in the future, as we build more and more of this stuff, we're actually going to end up instead being able to like talk and communicate better with our security team so they can understand which kind of issues we're coming into. Because we want to build a system that's amazing for front-enders. If this is how I'm going to like modify my data every time, and I'm going to end up having these never-ending strings, it's going to make it complicated and hard, and I'm going to be frustrated, and we don't want to have that. We want to have a design-friendly system, right? How long time do I have? 7 minutes, okay, because these guys, even that they're saying no all the time, which I understand, because we all know that when the server burns down and everything is gone, somebody's going to come after them and blame them. Well, our problem is that is the end of the server. If we can't make it pretty out on the front, we're kind of missing the opportunity we have to work together. So that's a thing we need to be better at. So the 20th example I have here of things I've learned is screenshots. Screenshots in Drupal 8 is one more better than Drupal 7. And why? Well, because what you basically can do is, as you can see here, we can do this. Oh yeah. Let's see what happens. Let me reload. So now we can actually put these things in, and that's like one of the small little awesome things. It was not a possibility back in the days. So that's the other thing you can do. If you need to like convince the rest of your team why you need to build on Drupal 8, besides of being able to actually modify and control your markup, dancing dudes is always a winner, right? So the 21st thing I learned about this is that when we talk future in the world of Drupal, we have a tendency of looking at the new shiny and want to play with that. So Dries just had a survey coming out, and you know what the number one thing people wanted? Was a preprocessor in core, like a CSS preprocessor. We want to have SAS in core. Let me just roll 4 years back. 960 grid system was very, very hard on its way into core. It was done by a margin that some of us freaked so much out and yelled so much why we should not get it into core that it was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. At some point, somebody also tried to yank in Bootstrap. Yes, Bootstrap into core, which would have been a good thing in some ways, but would also have been terrible because then we could not like modify and rebuild our whole system. So during the keynote like a week ago, I put out this tweet, like, how about we also put 960 back in? And Nathan Smith, who wrote 960, he goes like, no. This gotta be a joke. Well, 4 years ago, this was not a joke. This was like pure reality. So right now being all like, hey, let's yank in this shiny thing or that shiny thing. Do we really wanna have like a Ruby-based preprocessor? If we put it in, whatever we put in right now, we need to maintain the next 10 years. We don't want to put stuff into core that's not needed there. We actually want to remove stuff that's not into core. So before we get these like wishes, it's like you might think that this is a really good idea right now. Well, in 2 years, it's going to be a terrible idea. In 4 years, it's going to be even worse. And then it's going to be this chunk of crap you're going to move around with. So, and that's like one of the things that I've learned now about being like one of the core guys or whatever, to be actually, I'm turning into the dude who says no, which is not fucking fair. I want to play with the shiny toys. And now, talking about shiny toys, here's the next thing we're actually going to, when we're looking into the future, is this components thing. Components is a thing that we've been talking more and more about, the whole idea of actually rerouting and rethinking how Drupal 8 is going to build stuff. So go in and look into the components module and what it actually does. The whole idea is actually to, instead of theming a node, you're theming a component as a node, and then you call in this component. What the component module basically does, it rewrite the way that we can you call in the templates. If you want to look into this, John have done work on Zen, the 8.x version. You can see how it's done there. Pattern Lab I'm playing around with Pattern Lab right now, and they're trying to do the same thing, actually to make a way that we can build our sites without even touching Drupal and build our markup structure and build all these things. And that's kind of the next step that's very clear that we're going. We had a huge meeting a week and a half ago in New Orleans, and for the first time ever, I remember this for 10 years, there was actually an agreement all around the line of what is it that we need to do. And one of the things we talked about was actually making the front end a first-class citizen in the world of Drupal, instead of like this afterthought we kind of put in, which made me very, 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 very happy. And this is where we actually need more people. You actually you need to join us. And by joining us, well, first of all you guys showed up here. It's like amazing. Having a sold-out front-end event in the world of Drupal is not a thing I thought would even be possible. But by joining us, it's contributing to code, it's talking, it's discussing, it's playing about with these things. We have our Twig Thursdays, which might going to be a Tuesday, and might be going to be a Wednesday. As you can see, this is me sitting in my old apartment like 2.5 years ago, and Joel sitting in the other over in Canada somewhere. And this is kind of how a lot of things goes on. We scratch our heads a lot and trying to figure stuff out. If you don't want to jump in on these never-ending discussions, pretty much me coming up with new dumbass like use cases, and the rest of the group being like, Morten, how did that came into your head? That was kind of when I began to talk about doing uppercase, it was kind of David Hernandez like, why do you come up with these things? Like, well, because at some point we're going to do this. That's how we work. Another place is actually come into our Slack channel. We created our own little Slack channel instead of using Drupal Slack channel, because like IRC is used by old great bearded men like me. We figured out this whole new young generation of people uses stuff that just works out the bugs. They don't want to set up an IRC channel. So we're both using IRC, by the way, if you want to use that. But Slack is kind of where we take a lot of these discussions. The best thing about Slack is we even have a rant channel. So if you get really pissed off about something, you can go into apeshit mode. And I know today, John Albany actually created a new drinking game, which apparently every time I cursed, every time I talked shit about him, every time I talked shit about anything, you had to drink. You can follow all of these things. You can actually, and as you see, we even have a components place where we discuss these things. We play around with CSS. This is kind of the place where we're trying to connect everybody who's interested in like Drupal's front end and come and play around. We even have some very, very tough ladies to make sure that everybody's behaving in the room. I think pretty much the two most hardcore I've met in this front end world. So that's kind of the place you want to jump in. I'm going to put out a tweet about this. Also put out all of my slides so you can like see all these things afterwards. I'll put out the links. Also make sure it's going to get on our website. But here's like one little thing that sometimes I forget to mention, and that's actually the huge amount of work we've done to do all these things. As you can see, this has nothing to do with Drupal 7 at all, and these people up here is like, that's actually their job. I've just been the guy who yelled a lot and tried to make like stuff go. I'm pretty humble, believe it or not. I'm actually pretty humble when I'm figuring out these people I'm working with, how much awesome stuff they have done so far, and I'm just coming up with dumb ideas like the hash class and add and remove classes was kind of me sitting in Chicago with Kotzer, who's sitting down here, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, can I do this? And I created pretty much the worst code ever seen. Kotzer was like, oh, you cannot do that. I was like, fuck you, Kotzer, I'm going to do this shit. Then Joel saw that stuff, and he was like, are you fucking kidding me? You're not putting this shit into my theme. I'm like, dude, I am. So Joel went in on a work rage back in Austin. Actually, that cowboy picture of me is actually me testing Joel's like concept of hash and add and remove class. So in that way, we got that stuff in because we're trying to think out of the box. And you know what would be nice? Have more people who come in and like try to do all these things. Because no matter what we came up with right now, it's not going to be the same thing we're going to work with later on. Because what we think is modern right now is going to be old and boring in about a couple of years. So, comments on this, use Twitter, use the Drupal twig. We're trying to come up with a better name for years. Apparently we're idiots. I mean, we figured out how to change the whole theme system, but naming, as Harry Roberts said earlier, like naming stuff is hard. It's like the hardest thing of our thing. Coming up with Drupal front end or something, we never came around with that because Drupal front end can be whatever. But Twig is the template engine we're going to use. PHP template is dead. Even that it got a new maintainer. He's not here, by the way. But questions, feedback, whatever comments, hit me up with them. Come in with comments. If you have problems with your template, actually ping me just over the phone, because I get crazy excited figuring out the people actually using this stuff. That for a while was just, I had nights where I woke up and were like, holy shit, is this actually, am I actually pushing ideas in that's going to destroy Drupal? I kind of want to know if I destroyed Drupal or if you kind of liked it. So I'm actually Mortendk. I'm now the happy themer, semi-happy themer. And thank you all for listening. If you have questions, all that stuff, let's take them at the bar later on. Let's take them tomorrow. By the way, I just want to give a huge shout out to this dude over here, and that chick there, and that dude there in the green shirt. All these guys in the green shirts. What they've done with this event is pretty goddamn amazing. So thank you. And I have pretty much the most badass sticker you can get on your laptop. It's actually proven that your code is going to run 10% faster when you have this sticker on your laptop. I have a bunch with them. I'm going to drop them out in the information booth so you can pre-optimize your code without security issues. Thank you for listening to me rant for a little over an hour.